Will Scharf joining us live right now. Good morning, Will, and kudos to you.
Thanks a lot, Austin. Great to be with you, and congratulations on the big election win. Hopefully, they won't need your services as an alternate delegate, but if they do, I'm sure you will discharge your obligations with great skill and aplomb.
I'm sure I will, Will. So congratulations to you on your unanimous victory at the Supreme Court. Tell us how you feel and what was at stake, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, look, we feel great. This was a completely unprecedented attempt by the left to weaponize our court system, to deprive the leading presidential candidate in the country of his ability to run for office. And even more than that, to deprive every American citizen of their choice at the ballot box for a presidential candidate of their choice. This was really just a terrible, terrible thing that these left-wing groups tried to do. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court rejected their efforts unanimously, said that this idea that states could just all willy-nilly throw people off ballots, that just doesn't fly in terms of the Constitution, in terms of the way the 14th Amendment in our system of election works. So we were heartened to see the court's opinion. We were especially excited that it was unanimous. I think it's really important at times like this, now more than ever, that institutions like the court can get together around core constitutional principles and look past the politics or ideology of a given fight, of a given issue.
So was the argument then that the Supreme Court laid down that the states are not the ones whose responsibilities it is to discharge the 14th Amendment? Talk to us about the legal argument here.
Yeah, so it's pretty clear if you read the 14th Amendment, and especially if you look at the way the 14th Amendment was implemented in the aftermath of the Civil War, in the aftermath of its enactment, that the system that it sets up is for congressional enforcement of its provisions. So what's at issue here is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which allows for the denial of insurrectionists the ability to run for or hold offices. What the Supreme Court held yesterday is that in order for that provision of the 14th Amendment to be brought into effect, Congress needs to pass legislation, basically setting out a path, setting out a process by which somebody can be designated an insurrectionist and thereby deprived of their right to run for office. What the left was pushing, these left-wing groups like Crew that had brought all of these lawsuits all over the country, the system that they were pushing is that just state officers, state courts, people all over the country could just decide who was and wasn't an insurrectionist and deny them ballot access as a result. That's never been the system. That wasn't the system in the 1800s. It's totally at variance with both, I believe, the text of the 14th Amendment and also the practice history in the aftermath of its enactment. So I think the Supreme Court was on very, very firm footing deciding this case as they did, as evidenced by the fact that the ruling was unanimous.
Now, this was brought about because of what Colorado has done. More states have attempted this or are attempting this. Does this apply to all 50 states and the District of Columbia?
Yes, it does. All of the state processes have now effectively been overruled by the Supreme Court. So Shenna Bellows, this crazy Secretary of State in Maine, who just basically by diktat declared that Trump couldn't be on the ballot. This impacts her system. This impacts Illinois. This obviously overturns Colorado. This establishes conclusively a national rule with respect to this ballot access issue. So President Trump will be on the ballot in all 50 states, and the American people will have their choice of a candidate next November.
For sure. Speaking to Will Scharf, he's a candidate for Attorney General of the state of Missouri, and Donald Trump, one of Donald Trump's attorneys, who argued successfully the case before the Supreme Court with the resulting 9-0, totally unanimous decision handed down that protected Donald Trump and the American people's ability to vote for Donald Trump in the election this fall. This clears a massive legal hurdle for Donald Trump and sort of puts another win in his column. He does face several other challenges around the country, of which we are still being litigated. I'm not sure if you can speak to those or not, Will, but can you talk to some of his other challenges?
Yeah, happy to. Look, we've got 4 criminal cases going. There are the 2 federal cases, one in Florida over the documents issues, one in D.C. over President Trump's efforts to investigate election interference in the aftermath of the 2020 election. And that second case, we're going to be up at the Supreme Court in April on this presidential immunity issue that we've been litigating. You then have 2 state court prosecutions, one in Georgia. This is the Fani Willis RICO prosecution that's been exploding in public view for the last couple weeks over very serious allegations of corruption, misuse of public resources, and perjury on the part of the prosecutors. The 4th criminal case is the Alvin Bragg New York indictment that relates to a purported alleged business records fraud. I think it's a factually and legally very weak case. But that's currently actually scheduled to go to trial at the end of this month, at the end of March. On top of that, we have civil cases. We have the New York civil fraud case that was brought by Letitia James, resulted in a multi-$100 million verdict against the president for fraud, despite the fact that there is no defrauded party here. It's an absurd case. We're taking that up on appeal now. And then on top of that, you have the E. Jean Carroll cases, that the most notably Carroll 1, which is a defamation case. There's an $80-some-odd million judgment there that we're also taking up on appeal. So all in all, taken in toto, this is an unprecedented campaign of lawfare, an unprecedented weaponization of the courts, in my view, intended to interfere with President Trump's ability to run for president. It's wrong. We've got to keep fighting it. We are going to keep fighting it, and hopefully we're gonna chalk up some more wins in the coming months.
Is the president legally capable of pardoning himself from the federal charges that would go through if he becomes president of the United States again?
Well, if he becomes president of the United States again, as long as the cases have not reached final judgment, I would assume his Department of Justice would just dismiss those cases, since they should have never been brought in the first place. Self-pardons have never been litigated, but I think the answer is likely yes. But I don't think it'll even come to that. I don't think either of these 2 federal cases are going to make it to trial before Election Day. I am hopeful, I'm confident that President Trump will be elected in November, and that will resolve this once and for all. But I think it's just outrageous that he's had to defend himself in these courts over made-up crimes, cases that should have never been brought. All because essentially Joe Biden and the Biden administration saw an opportunity to weaponize our courts for nakedly political ends.
Is the president of the United States immune from prosecution for decisions that he makes while he discharges his office?
We believe that a president has absolute criminal immunity for acts taken while in office that fall within the outer perimeter of his responsibilities as president. Those are not private acts. Those are not private crimes. But if a president makes a presidential decision, exercises the official authority of his office, takes acts that fall within the outer perimeter of his official responsibilities, the same way that the courts have consistently held he has civil immunity, he can't be sued for those acts, we believe that he also needs to have criminal immunity. And if a president doesn't have criminal immunity for his official acts, we believe that will set off an unprecedented series of recriminations and prosecutions where every president on leaving office will be subjected to criminal prosecution by his political rivals. That's not the system that our Constitution sets up. We don't believe that's the system that our framers intended. We think the case for presidential criminal immunity for official acts in office is very strong, and we're excited to be in front of the Supreme Court on that issue next month.
The numbers of the live viewers continue to rise exponentially. Hundreds of people filing in right now. Thank you for joining us. Please do click like and subscribe to the channel. I'm speaking to one of Donald Trump's attorneys, Will Scharf. He's also a candidate for Attorney General in the state of Missouri at the moment. We're glad to have him here. So make sure that you stick around and subscribe to the channel so you can hear more great interviews like these. Will, if the Georgia case, the prosecution should continue, and they were to come to an indictment and to charge him criminally and then sentence him to a jail term, would the president of the United States be able to conduct business as the commander-in-chief while sitting in a jail cell?
Look, this is an issue. First of all, the Georgia prosecution is collapsing under its own weight, literally as we speak. Fani Willis and Nathan Wade both probably face more criminal jeopardy at this point than any of the criminal defendants in that case do, obviously, including President Trump. That case has been corrupted from the start, and we're confident that the prosecutors are going to be kicked off the case, and we're hopeful that the case will be dismissed as a whole. In terms of your constitutional question, a state court system cannot interfere with a president's Article 2 powers, the president's Article 2 responsibilities. We believe that if that, or I believe, I should just speak for myself on this, that if the situation you outlined were to come to pass, and I don't think it will, a president would still be entitled to take office, and there's nothing a state court system could do about that. I would also note that at any point, the Georgia Board of Probation and Parole could step in here and resolve this case conclusively by issuing pardons. We don't think that's necessary because I do think that case will ultimately be dismissed before it reaches trial. But that's another option there.
Is it a possibility that the Supreme Court may step in on such a constitutional crisis and issue a stay for any kind of a jail term or sentencing if that were to occur?
I don't want to predict the particular appellate pathway. I'm just telling you that if President Trump is reelected in November, I promise you he's going to be in the White House in January.
Good to know. Just speaking on a personal note, Will, a close personal friend of mine, a young man, was convicted on January 6th of entering the Capitol building. He did not destroy any property. He simply entered the Capitol building. He's been sentenced to 2 years probation. He had to serve a month stay with a bracelet around his ankle, committed no violent crime whatsoever, merely exercised his freedom of speech. Is it possible that there might be a second look at the January 6th convictions if Donald Trump is reelected this fall?
Yeah, look, I've heard worse cases than that, Austin. I've heard cases of people who just peacefully walked into the Capitol, no violence, no destruction, no nothing, who are now serving time in federal prison. I think what the Biden DOJ has done here is absolutely outrageous. I think it's essentially a legal flex. They're trying to show conservatives that if you're outspoken, if you protest, if you make your voice heard, that they're going to punish you for it. I think it's absolutely outrageous. And I'm hopeful that ultimately there will be a reckoning for this, that the people who have been unjustly convicted will receive pardons or will receive recompense. And the people responsible for this act, for this series of actions, this series of prosecutions, will ultimately be held responsible for what they've done. It's a total perversion of our system of justice. I don't understand how it's gotten to this point, and it really just speaks to the increasing radicalism of the Biden administration and of the modern left, that they would do this to essentially peaceful protesters.
Nearly 700 people now watching the Wake Up America show live. Good morning. Thank you to everyone who's joining us. I imagine that Rumble.com has given us the kiss of life and has put us on the front page. Thank you to all of our friends down there at Rumble.com, the platform for free speech. I'm speaking freely to Will Scharf. He's a candidate for Attorney General here in the state of Missouri and one of Donald Trump's attorneys who successfully argued the case in front of the Supreme Court that resulted in a 9-0 unanimous victory in favor of allowing Donald Trump to remain on the ballot in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. There seems to be a lot of nostalgia for the Donald Trump days, courtesy of Joe Biden. The CBS poll that was issued yesterday showed Donald Trump with his largest lead yet, 4 points up over Joe Biden nationally. And that doesn't include looking at just the states, the battleground states that Trump had previously lost. Now Joe Biden seems to be losing key portions of his base, specifically minorities, African Americans, women, and Latin Americans. Are you surprised to see that Donald Trump is in such a commanding position nationally right now? And to what would you attribute it to, Will?
I think you look at this election and you're comparing the records of two presidents. Under President Trump, we had a booming economy, a relatively secured border, and world peace. Under Joe Biden, we have millions and millions of people flooding across the border, inflation at levels we haven't seen in decades, and two major regional wars kicking off with the potential, God forbid, of a third. I think the American people see how Joe Biden has governed, and they want nothing to do with him. and look nostalgically back, as you said, on the Trump years when none of these problems seemed to be with us.
Sure. Will, I know you're running for Attorney General here in the state of Missouri. You run a great campaign. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners or perhaps plug before we let you go today?
I was with the president the last week, and I told him I was going to be caucusing for him in Missouri this weekend. And I asked him, what message do you have for the people of Missouri? And he told me, tell them in Missouri they need to fight like hell. So that's the message I'd carry to y'all. I think now more than ever, with these unprecedented leftist attacks on our Constitution, on the rule of law, we need to fight like hell. If we don't fight like hell now, I don't think we're going to have a country left in just a few short years. I think that's how dangerous the modern leftism movement has become. So we need to get out. We need to vote. We need to make our voices heard. We need to make sure we take back this country next November.
Well, you're a great American, but I think even more importantly, you're a great Missourian. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Austin. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, good luck on your campaign. Thanks for being so generous with your time today. We'll talk to you again really soon.